Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. And Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today my guest is Daniel Wood from Sweden, and his business is about property investing and event management and all sorts of things, and he's got his fingers in all sorts of little pies. So welcome, Daniel, and thank you for joining me today. And yeah, we'll just have a bit of a discussion about how you started and what's going on in your life at the moment.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. A real honor to be here on the show and be considered an expert, so I appreciate that. We've had a journey, and I say we, me and my wife Gisela, we run all our companies together, and we've had a journey. You know, both of us were in corporate, in regular companies. When we realized, it was actually when we got our first son, William. We realized that if we would go kind of the regular 9 to 5 or 9 to 5 plus route that we were on, we realized he would actually be spending more time at daycare with his teachers than he would be spending time with us, his parents. And that meant I would have strangers influencing my son's future more than we were. And that wasn't really what we wanted. So we started looking for other options, other opportunities. And we landed on property investing because we just got really excited about being able to invest in property, buying a house, renting it out, providing a home for someone, and also getting that passive income coming in every month. We studied the market. So we live in Sweden. I'm born here, raised here. I apologize for my accent. That's my dad's fault. He's from the US. But I'm born and raised in Sweden. But we looked at the market here and it just wasn't very conducive to investing. It's very regulated and hard. So we looked around Europe and we realized the UK is probably the easiest market in Europe to invest in. And we were very lucky to find a very skilled mentor to come and help us out. The one mistake we did, and one thing I've learned now, and I've spoken a lot to amazing people about this, is when you look for a mentor, you want to find someone that's done the same journey that you have, has had challenges and setbacks and has overcome them. And so we found a mentor that was British and was investing in the UK, you know, a stone's throw from his office. So he knew the UK market inside and out. He knew how to do a deal there, but he didn't know how to do a deal from 1,000 miles away. And that's the difference. So there were a lot of things that he kind of, you know, skipped over in the lessons because, you know, he just hadn't experienced it. You know, he knew that he would walk by on a walk every day and check out how the builders were doing. 1,000 miles away, I'm obviously not doing that. So I need to have different systems that I didn't learn. And so our journey started out by us getting ripped off for about 400,000 pounds. It was builders, it was partners or so-called partners, I should say, and different people. And 400,000 pounds was not money we had. We'd been kind of the perfect students and gone out and raised investor capital, put that together. And it takes time in property to realize how much, you know, if you've lost money, you know, because we were getting like fake build reports, fake, you know, project reports. So we thought we were doing really, really well. We were building our empire. And then things started kind of coming out one by one. And we realized that, wait a sec, these projects are not where they claim to be. And when we went back and tried to kind of figure things out, we realized we were down 400,000 pounds in the hole, which is obviously a little bit of a problem. And so actually when we were going through this, I was stressed out of my mind. You know, I barely slept for probably a 6-month period. And right, you know, towards the end of it, my accountant called me and said, Daniel, I got some bad news. It is time to bankrupt your company. And for me, that's for us in Sweden, that's the kiss of death. If you bankrupt a company, you're done. There is no more being an entrepreneur. That's it. You have one shot. And it's not the same, obviously, in the US, where you're expected to bankrupt 3 companies before you succeed. It's a little bit better in the UK, but in a lot of Europe, it's really, if you bankrupt a company, you're a failed entrepreneur, go back and get a job. So it was one of those like, oh, okay, what does this mean? And he said, well, what we'll essentially do is we'll bankrupt the company, we'll write off all this debt, and then we'll set up a new company. You start over from there. I'm like, wait, you're saying I can start over? He's like, yeah, just take all the lessons you've learned and then do it again and do it right. Wow, that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. But then I asked one question, and this was the fateful question where I asked, so if we don't pay that debt, who does? And he said, well, I mean, your investors are probably not going to see much of their money back. I said, so you're not saying we should, start over. You're essentially saying I should throw everyone else under the bus. He said, well, I guess that's another way of putting it. He said, well, all right, we can't do that. He said, well, how are you going to turn it around? I have no idea, but we're not bankrupting the company. We're going to figure this out. And that's where we got really blessed because, as you mentioned, we run an event company as well here in Sweden. And we started that during this journey because we were out internationally learning from all these amazing people traveling. And that was because no one was coming to Sweden. And there are lots of great entrepreneurs here. I mean, amazing companies have been started in Sweden. Just look at Spotify and IKEA to name two right off the top of everyone's head. Everyone knows them. Those are Swedish companies. But none of these like corporate teachers were coming to Sweden, these business gurus, so to speak. So we started an event company. We actually brought Kim Kiyosaki to Sweden. We brought Randy Zuckerberg to Sweden and lots of other amazing people. And we got to know the speakers. We actually got to know Kim Kiyosaki, and we talked to her about what we were going through. And she gave us some great advice for kind of how to turn some of these projects around. We had to go back and restructure the debt. We had to go back and renegotiate with builders. We had to raise new capital to kind of infuse into the projects, and she helped us with structures there. We worked with Randy Zuckerberg and her team, who gave us great advice on, how to scale the business. And essentially what we had to do was we had to do enough good deals to compensate for this kind of anchor, this lead weight that was holding us down. And it literally took us years to do, but with the help of all these amazing people, and there are dozens more than I can ever begin to thank. We were able to turn it around, and we have a nice portfolio today, and we have developments, we have direct property we own and rent out. We're actually the founding investor in a golf resort in South Wales. So we've done things, but the kind of the upshot of all this is that, yes, we went through the investment journey and we got to the other side. But had it just been us, had I had the 400,000 pounds to lose there at the outset, no one would have known about this. It would have been just been me and Gisela doing our thing, and no one would have known. But because the investors were involved, and we had to update them and let them know that, well, look, we've screwed up. This is what's happened. We're going to try to turn it around. And then coming back, quarter by quarter and going like, hey, it's a little better. Hey, it's a little better. Hey, you're going to have to give us more time, but we're working on it. And just that consistent. All of a sudden, people saw how these updates got more and more positive as time went by, and that we were getting to this point. And what happened then was that, they were talking about it. People knew we were screwing up originally, and they knew we were turning it around, and they then knew we had turned it around. And that caused people to start reaching out and kind of saying, hey, look, I'm on the same journey you are. What do I need to look out for? Could you help me? Could you coach me? And originally we said like, no, that's, we did this to spend time with my son. I've not spent time now. I've worked hard to get out of this. And now I want to, and now we have 3 sons. But at the same time, we knew what kind of the cliff they were running towards. And we said, well, you know what? Of course, we're going to help. And we started helping people out, and they started having success. They avoided the mistakes we made. And, some of them could quit their jobs and move to Spain, or just, travel or whatever else they wanted to do. It was so cool. And that's when we said, all right, we got to do this properly. And we set up Momentum Property Education together with an amazing friend, one of the best investors I've ever met, a gentleman called Lukasz Brzezinski, who came in. He's a risk management expert, which for obvious reasons, you understand why I appreciate. And we partnered up, and that became Momentum Property Education, where we've now helped hundreds of people kind of not make the mistakes we do, instead actually successfully buy and scale property portfolios. So it's been a journey, and it's caused us to get into all these other industries, both, first property, then running an event company, then running an education company, working with software, working with marketing, all these different parts. And it was basically centered around live events. And we talked about this a little before the show, Rose, is that we really got into this at the kind of tail. We did the events business a couple years. I think we started that in 2017, 2016, but the education company we started at the tail end of 2019. And just as we were starting to do events, I was being invited all over Europe to come and speak. I was doing, 4 or 5 different cities in Sweden. I was in Denmark. I was in Norway. We had an invite to Zurich, to South Africa, to Portugal, and then COVID came. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the whole business landscape changed. And we'd been working so hard. I was literally out doing events 4 to 6 days a week. So we were doing everything live. We had essentially zero online presence. And all of a sudden the live world disappeared, right? We're all stuck in our home, and we had to make that shift. And that's been such an exciting journey. We've shifted to, getting on podcasts like this, speaking to amazing people like you, Rose, getting to connect with your amazing audience to take this time. And we've created our own podcast where we interview property experts from all over the world. And we have a Facebook community now. And of course, all our courses are digital now. And that's allowed us to provide much more value. We still have, coaching, we still have Q&As and online, but we can give so much more value in less time. So it's been really, really exciting, although our revenue took a 90% hit there right when COVID started. So that's kind of what we've done and how we got here. And it's been a journey, I'll say.
Yeah, sounds like it. I know that COVID, it's been a blessing, and it's been, in some ways, it's been a blessing, because a lot of people weren't using the online space in a productive manner. And, so many more podcasts now are out in the marketplace, and, people have had to change the way that they have meetings. So Zoom has, improved their product to no end just in a few months, because, Zoom is the way to go normally, when you want to meet with people. But, it saved people money now, because you don't have to travel, you don't have to hire a room, and you don't have to get catering and all sorts of things. So in
that's
that way,
huge difference. I mean, we were expected to go and meet someone, weren't we? Whenever it's like, hey, can we jump on a phone call? Like, no, come, let's have a meeting. And it takes half the day to travel, get there, do the meeting, do the politeness. Now, no one expects that. Everyone's like, well, let's get on a Zoom call. And you're in and out of meetings. You're so much more effective now, too.
Absolutely. So yeah. And I quite enjoy it, because I don't normally go to networking events, or, and I should do, but I don't. I just get a bit uncomfortable with them, But
and now you have an audience of hundreds of people that you connect with every single week through the show. It really just changes the whole game.
Yeah, and I think you're about my 152nd interview in less than 12 months. So, and I've met 152 amazing people. It's I wouldn't have met them otherwise. So, to me, this has been a blessing. So,
yeah, I think it's as with everything too. It's what's happened during COVID is obviously a lot of businesses have shut down. And I mean, in our industry, the events industry, it's been totally, crushed. Property investors have obviously generally done pretty well. So that's lucky that we're kind of both. But for companies that were pure event companies, they've been devastated.
Yeah.
But for those few that survive, what happens is now there's that much less competition. We've learned so much, we've shifted to online, but that doesn't mean when the world opens up, we're not going to go back and do live events again, which means essentially we've potentially doubled our revenue, because now we have an online process and we have a live process, and now we can do both. The ironic thing I want to say is, I used to be out and I would meet people every single day, but we're actually much, much closer now to our students and to our community, even though I haven't met any of them for over a year.
Yeah. Well, we have, because Australia's quite open now, except for one state keeps getting COVID cases all the time, but we're having hybrid events, and we're finding them really, really successful. So, if you live interstate, you can still Zoom to a meeting.
Oh, right. So it's a live event, and then you're kind of Zoom casting the event, broadcasting it as well. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's been I don't know, it's been awesome for a lot of event venue or companies that have done that. If they're holding conferences or seminars or whatever, you have the people that are actually in there in the room, and then it's zoomed out to other people who can't travel, or for whatever reason, or just don't want to travel. They can still Zoom in, and it's really wonderful. And it's people have had to pivot that way to get their event businesses up and going again.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. We're still in semi shutdown in Sweden. There are rules. I think you're only allowed to meet 8 people at a time at what would be an event, which basically, we used to do, our average event was around 100 people. So there's a little while left.
Yeah, there is. A lot of countries are like that, unfortunately. COVID is, it doesn't look like letting up anytime soon either.
We'll see. I'm hoping for the vaccines to kind of take hold and, let us go back to the normal. But again, in the meantime, you can't just sit back and wait for it. You gotta keep moving. And that's where we've been very blessed to have amazing people around us. We've been able to create a great process for connecting with our students. We've actually just literally on Friday, we created a whole new communications calendar where, we do different events, and, we're doing a lot of things on our YouTube channel where we're able to connect more and more with our community. So it's been a journey. It really has. But I think if you keep learning and, taking the feedback, then I think those are the companies that will survive. And if you survive times like this, that's where you then have that explosive growth when you come out of it, which obviously all entrepreneurs are always dreaming of.
Oh, yes, definitely. Now, I guess, I've got to ask this burning question. How did you get out of debt, and how are the investors now?
Well, so that's where the challenge really was, right? We had to go back, and I had to have really, really tough conversations with the investors and kind of explain that, essentially we'd lost their money, and that, if they essentially, I had to be blunt and say, look, if you want, it's your right to take the company to court and declare us bankrupt. What will happen then is you'll get about 10 to 15% of your investment back after the cost of the court, but that's your prerogative. My plan is to somehow turn this business around, figure it out, and then pay you back your investment. You're not going to walk away from this with a profit, but you're going to get something. And so essentially all the investors said, well, look, that's not really much of an offer you just gave me there, Daniel, but obviously I want my money back. And I said, well, yeah, sadly, it is what it is, right? This is where we are. And, we had the option to bankrupt the company. That would have been such an easy decision. I could have just hit that button, walk away from it, and legally, no problem, no harm, no foul. But in a kind of integrity standpoint, we said, no, that's not what we're going to do. And so we had to go back and kind of stop the interest, because we were paying interest to the investors. So that was accumulating faster than what we were making. So I had to essentially say, no, that is now stopped. No more interest. We're going to build, we're going to try to create income. And so that took care of the bleeding. I did go back to some of the investors, and some of them were willing to take equity on like separate property deals that we'd done and stuff. So I could move some of the debt out into other projects and take it away from debt and make it into co-ownership. So essentially I sold equity in properties to get that done. But still, we were left with a huge shortfall even at that. So the only thing we had left was really go out and do more deals. And there we tried a lot of different things, but in the end, the simple thing was we partnered with someone in the UK that had decades worth of experience, that had the credibility, and then we had we had the ability to connect with people and get it out there. And so we basically said, look, you're not really investing with us. Obviously we've kind of proven our integrity by not bankrupting the company, but we haven't really proven that we actually know what we're doing. And so we said, well, look, you're going to partner with us, and we're going to partner with our partner who does have the legitimate background. So you know that the project is going to go well. And that's how we kind of started turning it around. And that allowed us to start building up our reputation as investors, because deals started going well. And then, then that was how we had to do it. We had to go out and do one deal at a time, either, at the beginning only with partners, and then ourselves. And then over time, we ended up doing well over 100 property deals to turn the game around. But finally, we got to that point, because we've also come in, the kind of downside for us is we haven't come in a flip market in the UK. Because it's very easy, we could have made that money much, much faster if we'd bought, refurbed, and sold. But we were investing through, the Brexit times, when the market took a dip because of Brexit. And then, the run up here, and then, COVID and everything. It's not really been a market to flip through. So the work for the past few years has really been buy a property, use equity to get investors out, get cash flow that can offset interest rates, and then slowly accumulate equity enough to start getting the investors out. So it's been a slow, steady slog, but that's how we've done. Regarding the investors, it's a very, very mixed bag. If you spoke to them, I think most of them would probably come back to you and say, like, well, at least they got integrity. I'm sure a lot of them would say, well, but they're not very good investors. They screwed it up. and that is their prerogative. It was our first deals, and we don't apologize for it. We do apologize for it, I should say. I don't try to come with any other explanation. It's we screwed up, and it was we threw ourselves in. We had a mentor. We thought we were doing right, and it turned out we were not, and things went south very, very quickly. But I think most of them would say that they wouldn't. Maybe they probably wouldn't recommend someone to invest with us, and I believe I completely understand why. But I don't think they would stop anyone from investing with us. I think they would say, look, it didn't go well for me, but at least I get my money back. So, take your chances. I think that's kind of it. I think that's all you can expect. I know that a lot of people tell the stories about how they screwed up, and then the investors are over the moon, and they come back and they're throwing in millions into their companies. But in the end, I think if you've lost people that much money, they're not going to be trusting you in the first round again. It takes a while to build that trust back. And some of them are looking at projects with us, they're considering it, but I'm definitely not pushing them. I'm very, very careful, very, very respectful. And I think that's kind of how you have to treat it. We screwed up, but luckily we have been and have made amends. So
that's good. Now, where can people find you, Daniel?
Right. So there are multiple ways to connect with us. So kind of pick your poison kind of thing. We're on YouTube, where we do 3 shows a week. We talk about, we have one on Tuesdays where we talk about the property market and the economy. We have our podcast that comes out on YouTube, but also on all podcast platforms. So you can find them, the YouTube channel on Momentum Property Education, and the podcast is Momentum Investing. On Saturdays, we talk about passive income. So we have a passive income show. You can connect with us on Instagram, where you get a bit of a behind the scenes to meet us, see what's going on around the momentum and in the life of a property investor. Feel free to join our Facebook community, International Property Investors, where it's a community of 1,500 investors. We do Q&As every single week. Or connect with us on Clubhouse, where we do more personal development style events. Our handle is Property Skills. The name is in me, Daniel Wood. And we've done Clubhouse rooms with Les Brown. We've had Tyrese Gibson. We've had Simon Zucci. A lot of amazing people join us there about personal development and how to grow.
Perfect. And I guess what final words of wisdom have you got to share?
I think for me, the key has been, persistence. Persistence and never giving up, but especially also never believing that you know best. Kind of being humble enough to say, look, I have an idea. I like the idea. I'm going to try it out. And that's where in Silicon Valley, they often talk about what they call minimum viable product. Just get something good enough to present to the market. And then without your ego being involved, take the feedback. We do that all the time now in the team, where we'll have an idea, we'll create maybe a course or a product or even just a registration page or something for the company, and everyone will be involved, or they'll build their own version, and we're all so proud of the version we've created, right? And this is going to be so good. But we always split test things. We always try out two versions, one that is maybe more conventional, or the old version, or whatever it might be, and one is the one where kind of our ego is saying this is the one we want to win. And I'll tell you, 80% of the time, the other version wins. and that's allowed us to get better, though, because every time we do that, we learn something. We say, all right, this one's working better. And we never, I think, being persistent, but daring to throw that mud against the wall, seeing what sticks without putting any ego into it, taking that and then trying to refine it further, create a new version, a new split test, a new test, throwing that at the wall and seeing what happens. And we do that every single month. We do that on a lot of things we do. And every single quarter, we go through every single student we have and say, well, why was this person successful? Why weren't they more successful? Why hasn't that person been successful? What would they have needed? And we take that review and say, look, if they haven't been successful, it's not their fault, it's our fault. And I think that's why we have such a high rate of people being successful. But then we ask the question, how do they become more successful? And what can we do? And so we're actually right now going through a huge review of all our courses, where we're improving certain aspects, where we see if that student had only gotten that, they would have been able to blow it up even more. And I think that's taking the ego out, being persistent, trying things, and taking the feedback to heart. I think if you do that, it might take longer than you want to be successful, but you'll always be successful in the end.
Perfect advice. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's what we're doing. We're hoping it's the right advice.
Yeah, no, it's good advice too, because persistency is the key to a lot of things, and you do have to let your ego not ride above everything else. You need to let the ego go.
Yeah,
because it can ruin a lot
especially
of things.
with how often I'm wrong. Yes, if I let my ego play a role, then we don't have a business. So I think that's an important call to do.
All right, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And
right back at you. I really appreciate being here, and I appreciate everyone listening to us. And thank you so much for getting to be on your amazing show here, Rose.
All right, Daniel, thanks so much. Bye for now.
Bye.